Hey guys, welcome to the start of a new series. In this series, I'm going to be going over some unrated levels that I personally think deserve to get that type of recognition. I'll attempt to give a balanced view of the level, and at the end, I'll determine whether the level deserves a rate, a feature, or an epic. As I said, this is all my opinion, and you are completely free to hold your own. Feel free to discuss your thoughts in the comments, along with any suggestions for further levels to be added to this series. I'll be interested to see them. I'm starting off this series with a solo level by a fairly unknown creator. The main reason for this being that this is actually their first serious solo level, although I still think World Tour is a gem in the rough. This level is Void by Chloe2012, a level that has stayed unrated for around 3 months as of writing. It's not exactly surprising considering that this is both the creator's first level and a harder insane demon, with a song that was banned from Newgrounds when the level came out, all of which very much limit the likelihood of a level getting rated, despite this level receiving probably 4 or 5 sends at this point. I think one of the main draws of this level is its originality, and that's quite a vague term, so let me explain why originality can so often affect my and others' opinions on levels. The reason that originality is valued so much is because it shows you are going beyond what is expected to deliver a product of which you are truly proud. If Chloe had wanted to make a feature-worthy level, she could have just done what everybody else is doing to get rates these days, but instead she chose to detach herself almost entirely from the common trends and create something she knew she was going to be happy with. This is an admirable quality, as it shows you truly have a passion for this game as an art form rather than just as a means to get CP. The song choice links in with this as well. Instead of just going with a song that has already been used in many other rated levels, she chose to go out of her way to find a song that has never been seen before in the game. From my own experience of trawling through the endless Newgrounds audio pages, I know that it's incredibly draining and difficult to find an artist that is completely unknown in GD who also makes good music.
Fucking whatever. Whatever. Alright.
Once again, this just shows how much passion and thought was put into this level, and it shows why originality will never be discredited, even if the final product of it is flawed. However, this level, while not flawless, does deliver well on the expectations for a creator with no CP who puts passion into their first serious project. The first thing I want to discuss is the motifs present throughout the level, in particular the use of orbs. While most people, including myself, would have noticed that the first part does not include any orb except blue and green, it often takes a rewatch to notice that the level never uses any orb except these two throughout the entirety of its duration. This detail is subtle, but works wonderfully for the level in 2 main ways. For one, limiting yourself like this will pretty much always make your gameplay more original, as it limits the types of movement that the player can do, encouraging more experimental gameplay. Secondly, it brings all the parts together because the player's movement is very similar throughout. This is very important for a level like Void, because although it only has 5 different parts, they vary greatly in structuring and theming, but the orbs and player movement form a subtle link between them all. While I do feel that black orbs would have been a better orb to use because they resemble the Void that the level tells the story of, this is still a very clever way to prevent your level's parts from feeling disconnected. Speaking of the storytelling in this level is very interesting to say the least. The first part uses these calm sunset colors and a detailed background with the same calm vibe, along with a slow speed and mostly readable gameplay to lull the player into a full sense of calm. The sun slowly setting and the colors darkening is a subtle way to drive up tensions near the end of the part as we get closer to the drop. The transition into space here is not done as smoothly as I would have liked, which is mostly caused by the transition being in the middle of a bar instead of at the end, and the lack of structures to fill in the empty space to the right. The space part is also one of my least favourite parts, mostly because of the background. I understand why there's empty space at the bottom, although there's no slow increase in star density which would ease in the transition to space. But why do the stars stop at the top of the background? It doesn't really make any sense and sort of brings you out of the level as a result. The transition into the drop makes up for some of the flaws in this part though. The chimes in the music along with the empty style of gameplay build up very well to the drop, and the logo appearing in thin text from the stars creates an incredibly eerie atmosphere. Unfortunately, the drop doesn't quite live up to the incredible build-up. I think the main issue here is the lack of detail in all aspects of the design. The block fill is literally just black blocks, and while I understand that they need to have this base for the dripping effect to work, I also know that with clever layering you could still have more detail. The fact that the blocks take up so much space on the screen means that most of the time the player's view is just covered in plain black. This, along with the general staticness of the part as a whole, and the underwhelming background, leads to the drop being very disappointing and not matching the song at all. Although this part's design may be fairly subpar, the gameplay seems to have been the main focus, and so it's pretty fun and unique. The tricks make this part more interesting, but are not hard to learn at all, meaning that this part is original without being frustrating. There is one choke point at this bull transition that seems to be very inconsistent, and is actually the main reason I haven't beaten this level yet, because it's very frustrating to die to that after getting past the first 2 parts. The next section sees us return to the stars, which is very fitting to the song. However, it's fairly disappointing that this reuses the exact same background from the earlier space part with no additions, especially when it commonly bugs out in practice mode and start positions, most likely due to the long move time required to keep the background there for that long. Despite the background, there's still a lot to love about this part. The connected stars you traverse are incredibly original, and I love the way that Chloe made the appearing gameplay here. Although there's no indication of where the stars will appear, once you've learnt it, all you have to do is hold from a specific position and it works every time. Any other appearing stars are not unpredictable, because they mostly just mean you have to jump slightly late off a platform. It's quite weird that only the speed portal at the end out of all the other gameplay elements has a starry design, although it does look pretty cool, even if the player clips between its elements due to some weird layering. The next section is probably my favourite, both gameplay and design wise. This part ties together all the flaws of the past section and fixes them to create a wonderfully intense and satisfying part. Just as in the drop, the blocks are very plain and solid, but here Chloe has made a cool window effect so that you can see the background through the blocks, and it doesn't have the earlier issue of most of the screen being taken up by plain colour. Speaking of the backgrounds, this has none of the issues of being too boring or plain like the earlier backgrounds, instead feeling way more like the first one in its complexity and atmosphere. Seriously, the atmosphere created in this part is insane. I think the blocks are a bit static, but everything else just feels so climactic. From the sharp structures and abrupt colour changes to the enormous singularity for which the level is named. It all peaks in intensity until the final spam and the ending logo. Normally I don't like when levels end straight after the drop, but in this case it means that the level isn't dragged on for any longer than necessary, and the intensity of the level remains until the very end. This part is also incredibly fun, despite some thinking that it's the most difficult section. It's incredibly easy to learn, and the fast-paced movements of the wave match perfectly to the song. There are some difficulty spikes here and there, but mostly it remains consistent. I wish people would understand that it's okay to make this type of gameplay. Many demons nowadays rely far too much on fast game mode changes to add intensity, rather than using decoration effectively, and this level shows that you don't need to sacrifice readability in order to make thematic gameplay. Overall, I think this level is carried by its originality, but that's not to say it doesn't have some stellar parts in itself. This is especially surprising considering it's Chloe's first serious level, and I have to commend her for pulling off the intensity so well, seemingly on her first try. So, what do I think this deserves? Well, if the quality was consistently up to the standard of the first and last part, especially in terms of matching to the song, I would say that this 100% deserves epic. However, there are several parts which are holding this back from that rating for me. My final verdict then is a solid 2 creator points for Chloe. I'm very much looking forward to her next level, and I hope this level gets what it deserves soon. Thank you all for watching this video. If you want to lay down some hot takes or other levels I should review in the comments, that's absolutely fine by me. Cheers, and I'll see you next time, I guess.